Clip 365 on this Sunday night, December 16th. We are doing Round of Sports Shots where I get to talk Kentucky sports. Tonight, joining me, Michele Brown. Michele is with Big Blue Views, Cameron Mills Radio. Curtis Burch. Curtis is a radio host with Wildcat Country and Locked on UK. My man Terry Brown. Terry is Cats Talk Wednesday and Cameron Mills Radio. Guys, happy Sunday. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the first visual show of my Sunday night sports stuff. So I appreciate you hanging with me. Let's have fun.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Let's start with what I want to do. We're 10 games into the men's basketball season. I'd like to do a quick, as cliche as it is, a report card of 10 games in. Player transfers, recruiting, team celebration. Actually, the 93 celebration happened last night or yesterday too, right? You were there, Michele. I guess I don't know if any of y'all were there. I'm gonna start with you, Michele. Let's go. 10 games in. Give me your quick assessment, and then we'll let the panel jump in.
Well, we're not as good as people assumed we would be based on how we played in the Bahamas, obviously. I don't think we're as terrible as some other people think we are right now, although we definitely have some weaknesses. I would give them probably a B to B minus so far. I mean, I see improvements. We need Nick Richards to be Bahamas Nick Richards. We need him to be sophomore Nick Richards and not last year Nick Richards. If he can start getting a little bit of consistency and not look lost, that would help things out tremendously, because that would add some other element to go with Travis Reed Travis. Oh, geez.
It's okay. John Calipari did it, so you can do it.
Why does he have to have two first names or two last names, depending on how you look at it? We'll just call him Travis for the sake of okay. But you get him and Washington. I think Richards would be complimentary. Of course, E.J. Montgomery could do that too, but neither one of them would be consistent enough. I'm encouraged by our guard play, and watching Baker come in last night. I don't know if Curtis thought Calipari was being serious when he said he forgot that Baker was on the bench. That's kind of a glaring omission. But when Jamal came in, he did what he was supposed to do, and that was nail 2 3-pointers in 30 seconds. And I think that the cheers for that were only rivaled by the cheers for Josh Allen when he came out on the court. The coaching, I don't have a problem with how Calipari coaches. I've got faith in what he does, but there seems to be something disjointed with the coaching staff this year. There's been things that have happened in games where we said we're going to do one thing and somebody messed up, like when they had Keldon Johnson guarding the wrong guy. In one, I don't know. There's just something's off. I don't know what it is. Can't put my finger on it.
No, you're right. Something is off with this team.
Well, I don't want to say the team. There's something.
I'm including Calipari with the team. Yeah, I'm putting the whole team.
And I can't figure out what it. I mean, I don't think it's like some big controversy or something horrible, but something is off.
Curtis, 10 games in, your assessment.
If you want a letter grade, I guess if we're going to do that, at C minus. It's not been what it's supposed to be. You're not supposed to lose to Seton Hall. The guys Quade Green, obviously now transferring, you have to categorize that as I guess, what's that? You'll get a did not finish, his report.
Yeah, whatever.
So, he's kind of, underperformed from what you would have expected. PJ Washington has been up and down. The highs have been great. The lows have been not great. Against Utah, he just had an average game, a game that he should be able to do with minimum effort. He didn't seem to score enough points. Rebounding overall was kind of weird against Utah. They didn't have a ton of rebounds, probably because they hit a few more shots than they had in previous games. it is going forward. I think the interesting thing will be who is kind of the alpha dog, the catalyst. Calipari and people have used a lot of different words to describe the leader of the team. And while there can always be multiple, I think obviously on this team there's like 3 candidates in Reed Travis, PJ Washington, and Keldon Johnson. And if you're like looking at ceilings of what they could become, Keldon Johnson's the highest, PJ Washington's number 2, and then Reed Travis is probably peaked as a basketball player. And I don't mean that to knock him at all.
I think you're right.
Yeah. So I mean, he kind of is what he is at this point. But I think maybe for Kentucky to take the next step is Keldon Johnson just take control of this team, and if he can continue to shoot, not what he did against Utah because that was ridiculous, but if he can shoot to that level, then he can become a force.
Terry, jump in.
I'd go with a C as well. There was a great article that Tim, I can't think of his last name, for the Courier Journal put on there.
Sullivan.
Tim Sullivan, yeah. We do have issues. Talk about the basketball team, but it's all relative, right? Like, being 8-2, not looking great, that's a problem a lot of programs want to have. But grading on the curve of what we expect as fans, what Calipari and his staff expected from this team, it's not what it was. I mean, we were all high-fiving each other, walking around, after the Bahamas trip. That we need all to let that go. But right now, I just haven't seen 40 minutes of really good basketball. I don't know if we've seen a game with 20 minutes of really good basketball yet. So I think if we can do that, they can reach that Final Four that we thought was almost a guarantee. But right now, it's just, disjointed is the best way to describe what's going on.
Now, those are good points. Coming into the season, obviously, the expectation, the polls had us anywhere from 2 to 5 or something like that. But I think if we listen to Calipari at the beginning of the season, going into the Bahamas, he made the comment that he wouldn't be surprised if we lost all 4 games. Of course, we won and we looked pretty dominant, but I don't think he was sold on this team yet, as much as maybe the media and the fans were. And then clearly, the debacle against Duke kind of, set the bar for us so that we've got a ways to go. This team has been, in my opinion, very inconsistent. The Seton Hall loss, to me, was a bad loss. I don't know. And I think, Michele, you hit on it. There is something. I don't like the way Cal's coaching this team. I'm not feeling it right now with him. And then, and I've not had that, warm fuzzy at all this season with him. The way he's player rotations, I don't know. There's something missing, as you pointed out.
Well, I mean, his player rotations have always been strange before you get to the first of the year. It's kind of who does what, who works, you think maybe you found a group that works well together, and then somebody in that group suddenly decides to get stupid, or well, not really get stupid, but forget whatever it was they had learned, and somebody else rises up. I think a whole lot of problems will be solved if Tyler Hero can get consistent, because he's been, when he is feeling it, I mean, his defense, he's probably one of the better defenders, at least in terms of anticipating passes and breaking up that kind of thing. So we need that. It looks like Quickly maybe is starting to shoot a little better, possibly. But I don't know if there is something going on with the coaching staff. I just keep thinking there's something there, and maybe it's part of it is where Cal said he thought, he thought he didn't have to coach as much as he is now having to. He thought they knew more than they knew. And I guess I give him props for, saying, that's on me. I screwed that up and I've got to figure it out. So I'll hang out and see what happens over the next 2 or 3 weeks.
Curtis, we talked to, 10 games in, we gave the grades, but looking at the rotation, starting with looking at the starters from the, let's see, the Utah game, Johnson, Hero, Travis, Washington, and Hagens. Are you set? I mean, is that our best five? I mean, are you feeling good with that lineup?
Yeah, I think that's the best 5 players. I mean, fit-wise, Montgomery probably would fit better instead of Travis. Washington and Travis are a little bit similar, but Washington has shown some ability, and that was the one positive thing you could take away from the Utah game, is his defense. He blocked some shots, and that's something that Calipari said he needs to do if he's going to play Travis and Washington together. And if he's able to do that, then those guys will be able to play together a little bit more. And also, one of them needs to be able to hit some outside shots, and they've done it up to this point, but they both missed all their outside shots in the Utah game. From the back, I mean, the one I think the 2 guys that are definites are Washington and Johnson. And I'd probably throw Travis in there as well because he's just been pretty much consistent the whole season long.
Yes. Yeah.
Guard spot, yeah, I mean, I kind of feel like Calipari's playing the future with Hagens. I think Emmanuel Quickly is a little bit better now, maybe more prepared to play. And Calipari said after the game that the thing he's having to teach Quickly is that you don't have to be perfect. And he's kind of letting mistakes get to him. And so he played better against Utah. But Hagens just has abilities that nobody else on the team has. I mean, his speed, his quickness, his ability to get in the lane. And if Hero starts hitting his shots more consistently and Keldon Johnson continues to hit those shots, those 3 in the backcourt and wings would work perfectly together because he'd be able to dish off to guys that can hit shots or feed the 2 guys down low in Washington and Travis that can make buckets in there.
Finish that, Terry, that thought.
Oh, I certainly agree that we got to knock down shots if you're Hero. And I think that Hagens being the best on-the-ball defender, you have to give him minutes. But, I think this is what we're used to seeing, and this is what people gripe about on social media is November and December, Cal's just trying to figure it out. And we all assumed, and he told us that he wouldn't have to figure it out this year. And I think that's a little bit of the backlash that we're seeing. People don't like this kind of thing. We know we're going to be there in March, but we want to win in November, December. We were convinced this year was going to be different. This was going to be more of a 2015, more of a 2012, even going back to 2017 where, we could really lay the wood before we got into the conference season, and we just haven't seen that to this point.
Let's touch on the fact this past week, Quaddy Green announced he's transferring. Michele, during the last few years, we've had Quaddy, Charles Matthews. If you're going to throw in recruiting, we had one of the first decommits during, Cal's tenure here. Well, I mean, from a player's perspective, the whole team perspective, are we running into a situation now where the brand, if you will, is starting to take a hit? I mean, we're falling behind the recruiting game when it comes to Duke, clearly, and I'm gonna throw it out there. Coach K has mastered this one and done thing because the last few years has got the elite players. He's going to have 3 players probably drafted as the first 3 picks, this coming NBA draft. Alarm, Michele?
I'm not going to be saying there is an alarming thing going on just yet. I think there are several factors that go into it. One is other schools have now embraced one and dones, those that typically, no, we do things the quote unquote right way. And now that they're embracing that, we don't have as, guess before there was just not a lot of competition for those that wanted one and done.
Mm.
And that's one thing. Another is right or wrong or intentional or unintentional. I mean, it was great for a few years when ESPN would be, broadcasting pro day and everything. Kentucky is the place you go to the NBA. So, and I think as like Isaiah Briscoe comes to mind, he wasn't draftable in 2 years, so he leaves.
Mm-hmm.
So is that? I think that plays into something like, if you don't get it done, or you're not what you think you should be in 2 years, are you leaving? I mean, the Quade Green thing, the one that throws me about that, not that he transferred, because I don't think he was the greatest fit at UK. Just his particular talents, I just don't think that was the best fit. I'm not surprised he transferred. What I'm surprised at is that it was the abruptness of it, and that he didn't finish out the semester, and he could have and still played for another team at the exact same time next year.
Yeah.
I don't understand that, but I don't think it's anything about the coach. I don't know. Again, it's something's off. Maybe it's not having Orlando Antigua.
I've heard the Coach O chatter. Curtis, jump in.
Well, I mean, Coach O's never coming back to Kentucky. I can kind of unequivocally almost say that, mainly because of what happened in South Florida, and even his brother ended up getting in trouble with that situation. I mean, you kind of understand that, and right. I mean, he's not crushing it at Illinois at this point, but I don't think he's ever going to come back. But I mean, I understand the concept of is the staff different? Obviously, the staff's a little bit different, and you got different personalities than some previous times. But it is kind of it's a fluky situation, and you kind of run into a spot where, if Penny doesn't get the Memphis job, this is probably still a talking point, but not as big as one because Kentucky gets Wiseman. If Calipari makes a slightly different judgment and goes all in on Trae Young last year, and he doesn't promise him shots, but maybe, softens his you're not going to get to shoot all the shots approach that he tells guys, and Trae Young comes to Kentucky, Quade Green's not at Kentucky. So those kind of things they compile is what ends up happening, and they kind of continue to build on each other. And then what I think has happened in the past couple of years is, like Isaiah Briscoe thinks he's going to get recruited over, and to a certain extent he did, with De'Aaron Fox in his sophomore season. But I mean, the year after that, Isaiah Briscoe would have played a ton. So guys are kind of worried. Maybe, and each individual case is a little bit different. Maybe they're worried about being recruited over when at this very moment in the past 2 or 3 years they wouldn't have been, because Kentucky is getting great recruiting classes, but not the elite level where the freshmen can step in right away and take over.
Right. Terry, finish.
Well, my whole thing is, and this is this narrative that I've seen out there, that the program has been basically garbage since the 2015 Final Four loss. And I don't know about you, but I enjoyed the Fox, Monk, Bam team very much.
Too. Yeah, very exciting.
Regular season SEC champions, 2 points away from all that. We have to look at this realistically. 4 Final Fours in 5 seasons. Was Cal going to get to 8 and 9 seasons? That just doesn't seem right. I said on my show, and I've said to friends and family, the second we take a step back in recruiting, not out of the top 5, but the second we are not number 1, it's going to be cataclysmic, and that's what we're seeing right now. It's cyclical. I agree with everything Curtis is saying as far as, the landscape is different. My only caveat to Duke crushing it, they've been crushing it since 2015. They've been beating Cal at his own game. And I'm checking the record books. The team we should be focused on is Villanova. Kentucky and Duke have been to the same amount of Final Four since 2015. In the meantime, Jay Wright and Villanova have put 2 banners up. So if anything, maybe Duke and Kentucky isn't the battle back and forth we like to think it is. What's Jay Wright doing in Philadelphia?
Mm. Well, I think it's fair to say what Jay Wright is doing in Philadelphia is not the way Cal wants to do it. because
Right.
Jay Wright is, relying on veteran players, um, and experience. And Cal flat out has acknowledged that he chooses talent over experience every time. Thus why we go with, relying on 4, freshmen or whatever each year, that turnover. Again, looking back at the recent transfers, I mentioned Matthews, but I forgot about Marcus Lee. Granted, Marcus was good, but he wasn't a game changer to me. And then Sasha Kalia-Jones, another non-game changer. But, I think, Curtis, you pointed it out that, all these players that are transferring, I think one of the main reasons is that they feel like they're getting out, they're facing an uphill battle every year because Cal's bringing in players to, steal the, get the minutes and, lead the way, from that point on. It's a very freshman-oriented mindset, and I think the guys like Quade Green just, I don't know if in his mind I think in his mind he feels like he's got a losing battle going on here because he's going to get out, get players, new players in every year to take that spot.
Yeah, and I think that's probably true. You could track his minutes, and they were going down. And I think Calipari said that something to the effect of Quade realized or said to him that he couldn't overcome what he was faced with at Kentucky, and so he wanted to move on. And that's fine. And the problem is it's tough when you're having, and you just roll through all those names, all those guys that transfer out of the program, and each one is an individual case. And so it's tough to kind of maybe connect all the threads and make them into one thing because they're each just a little bit different. But I mean, at some point, just gotta, and it kind of sounds silly to say it again, but it's luck to a certain extent where pieces fit together, like the title team, where you have a senior who is not necessarily a dominant force in Darius Miller, and while he came off the bench a lot, he can still erupt. So if you got to have the stars aligned to a certain extent, and being the coach, you can align them, but it's tough. And the one thing that Calipari said when he was discussing recruiting this week, he said that if you tell a kid he's not a one and done, he takes it as an insult. And so when that notion is already in their mind, and by the time they get to a sophomore season, specifically at Kentucky, questions arise. And I mean, a perfect example of it is Nick Richards. Everybody's kind of like, what's up with this guy? He was a 5-star. He's not contributing enough. And I don't know if maybe he will be a bust. Maybe he won't be. And, maybe the bright lights of Kentucky doesn't allow for guys to grow as easily. And maybe that could be a factor in all this as well.
Yeah. Michele, I think they're touching on some good points, and I just think with all these 5-star players coming in, the expectation is that these guys should be immediately making an impact on the program, and when it doesn't happen, I think a lot of these kids see it like, if I'm not doing it now, I don't think I'm going to do it, because then the cycle continues with a whole bunch of other new star-studded players coming in, and then this cycle, I think, is just going to continue. I think we're going to continue losing a player here and there every year.
Well, again, I don't know that that's necessarily the expectation that Cal is putting on players. I think it's an assumption by fans and by the media that you come in here and you ought to be out 2 years max, and I think that's doing a lot of service. But just like they said, like Cal said, if you go and tell somebody you're not a one and done, they get offended. And Curtis, you can probably correct, but didn't he actually, when he recruited Tyler Eulis, said he didn't want him if he thought he was a 4-year player?
Yeah, that's what he said. Paraphrasing him, but basically,
So, and Kevin, I think you said something about that it was a freshman oriented thing. I think it's a talent and results oriented system, and you can either bust your butt and I mean, Shea Gilgeous-Alexander is a prime example. He was not, this time last year, wasn't that much to look at. He was kind of flubbing around, and all of a sudden, he goes out, he's in the NBA doing a fine job. I'm just not ready to hit a panic button yet, because it's things come together after New Year's more often than not, and I think that can impact what will happen to us going forward.
Well, we're going to talk New Year's. Curtis, I know you're on a schedule. It's 9:30. You can stick around. You need to go.
I can do a question or two.
Okay. Well, real quick, we'll talk about a nice little segment. Michele, look at 2019. Usually, when Kentucky rolls around at the beginning of the year in the SEC play, we're not arguably the third or fourth best team in the conference heading into SEC play. So I'll start with you, Curtis. We can go battle when it comes to the conference, because there's some damn good teams in this conference. Tennessee is just unreal.
Yeah, they're kind of almost the polar opposite of Kentucky in the sense that they want just veteran dudes that know what they want to accomplish. And every time they go too close, the other team versus Auburn, who has a ton of talent, played really well this season. But I think the bottom half of the SEC is that rating is a little disappointing. And while it is kind of odd that Kentucky is the third best team, maybe the fourth, Mississippi State, I haven't fully bought into them at this point. But either way, they were expected to be the top, and it is kind of interesting to see that even though they are the third, in theory, like if you want to play it all the way out, and Kentucky finishes third in the SEC, but Tennessee is top 5 team, Auburn's like number 7 or 8, and Kentucky's 11th in the country, kind of very different from SEC in years past, where if you're third in the SEC, you're probably not getting a good NCAA tournament seed. I think there could be a situation where you could be third in the SEC and you could still be a really good to maybe even great team, because the ceiling of the top 3 teams is all very high. But I think some of the lower teams, like Vandy specifically, is the one that sticks out to me. And when they lost Darius Garland, I think they're going to falter a little bit. And LSU has been up and down. They got a lot of talent, so you never know what they'll end up doing. But I think the SEC overall, honestly, is kind of disappointed just a hair. And I think Kentucky will be able to get right a little bit in conference play when they're facing some of the teams that are, near the bottom. Going into the season, I thought there was just everybody was good. Now I'm kind of thinking there's a bunch that are good, but there's some that aren't that good.
I'm with you. I think as a whole, the conference has not been what we expected. Terry, jump in. Uphill battle for Kentucky SEC.
Yeah, I think, but this is what the conference wanted. There's been a lot of years it was Kentucky and whoever else decided to be good that year that really made noise in the tournament, but spreading the wealth around a little bit. And yeah, Kentucky's going to have to battle, but every time I walk to Memorial Coliseum and I look at the wall there, I'm like, well, teams come and go, but if I'm a betting man, I'm going to bet on Kentucky, to somehow, some way, get some sort of trophy. Like last year, I wouldn't have thought that team would have won anything, but winning the SEC title. So I'm not gonna say that we can't do anything, but it is gonna be they're gonna have to work hard. There's gonna be some nights they're gonna have to battle. Going to Knoxville is not going to be easy at all. So, but I still feel confident in this team, and Cal will tweak and work his magic, and we'll get another trophy or whatever we get for the SEC.
Michele, finish that thought.
Well, we'll just be everybody's Super Bowl.
Yeah, we've heard that a time or 10,000.
Yeah.
But yeah. So
I don't know if Ashton and Emmanuel and Keldon have heard that phrase yet, but I'm sure they will in the coming months. That's.
Yeah.
Let's see. Who do we start conference? I gotta look this up. Alabama.
Yeah.
At Alabama. Okay. Well, that'll be interesting.
Well, real quick, I know Curtis. Before we let him go, let me go on and bring it up. Before we head into the Alabama and 2019 conference play, we've still got 2 games left in 2018. Saturday, the CBS Sports Classic against North Carolina, and then it's December 22nd. And then on the 29th, they're playing Louisville here in the Yum Center. Look ahead real quick, Curtis, your take on the North Carolina game.
Well, the only way they're going to have to make some shots to beat North Carolina. North Carolina, every time I've seen them, they're just an offensive juggernaut. I mean, I guess their worst game against Texas, I hadn't seen that one, and I don't know exactly what happened, but, I watched the game against Gonzaga, and they got so many guys that can shoot it. It's just impressive to see. And so with the way Kentucky's played defense so far, the only chance they're going to have in the game is if they're hitting some outside shots. Now, they showed they could do that against Utah, but Utah isn't very good. And so we'll see what they can do against UNC. Again, this will be their third time traveling away from Lexington. The past 2 times they've lost. And, the Duke game was probably eye-opening. The Seton Hall game, Calipari counted as a win. But I just, unless they're just on fire from deep, I don't think they're ready to beat North Carolina at this point. North Carolina's experienced, and that they just got a lot of guys. They just got so many guys that can do it on that team. Now, Louisville has played well to start the season, but I still think they are a little bit undermanned, and I think Kentucky would be able to win on talent. And I think that so by the time we start the new year, they'll go 1-1. I think they'll probably fall in Chicago against North Carolina, but I think they'll be able to win at Louisville just because they have some guys that Keldon Johnson specifically, Ashton Hagens, those dudes seem to kind of like competition, and I feel like, and we don't have a ton of evidence because they're freshmen, but Keldon Johnson specifically might thrive in a rivalry game.
Okay, Michele.
Didn't I didn't answer already?
No, the North Carolina, North Carolina, Louisville.
So I guess I'm getting interrupted by my child, who's not really a child. I'm getting interrupted by a young adult. I agree with Curtis's assessment. How's that?
Fair enough.
I can't really get any. I mean, Curtis got a pretty good beat on that, so I agree with. I don't agree with him a lot, but I'll agree with him on this one.
This time, all right. Terry, North Carolina, Louisville.
I'm the same. What I've seen of North Carolina and the way Roy Williams runs that secondary break where they just relentlessly attack the basket. Those times when we have been competitive against it, we've been able to outscore them with Malik Monk going for 47 and that kind of thing. So I don't know if this team is ready for that, but they better be ready to come into the Yum Center because even though Louisville's outmanned, Kevin, here in town, that the Card Nation, as they call themselves, have really bought into Chris Mack. They've really bought into these kids. And so my concern is if it's a close game in the second half and Yum is rocking, who's going to be able to weather that storm, whether it's Keldon Johnson or Reed Travis? Is P.J. Washington going to be able to be the man? Because that's what happened the last time in Yum was when Quentin Snyder got hot, Malik Monk went cold, Fox wasn't 100%, and we end up losing that game. So we're going to have to put Louisville away because, like I said, I think the fans could – if we lose to Carolina and we don't bring it against Louisville, that's a quick 0-2 before we head down to Tuscaloosa.
Well, I'm going to go on record to say we will be we'll be 8-4 heading into Alabama because I don't think we can beat North Carolina, and I think Louisville will want it more here at the Yum Center. So, all right, Curtis, any more?
That's all I really got for tonight, guys.
All right. Thanks for hanging out with us, my brother.
All right, we'll see you.
All right.
Thanks, Curtis.
See you guys.
Curtis Bunch hanging out with us. All right. And now,
not
Burch. You're Burch. Not bad. Okay.
Good grief.
And we're down to 3. I can edit that out. I'll edit that out. Down to 3 of us. Again, Carrie may join us, but we'll see if that happens.
How did you get my last name on there? I've tried, and it always would just say Michele.
If you go to, it's like if you highlight your name, you see where it says, do you see like a more button?
Oh.
If you click, there you go. Yeah, click it, then you see rename.
Okay.
So I could actually rename you whatever I want to rename you right now.
Yeah, well, yeah, you try it and see how long you'll be alive to talk.
We'll play that game.
Yeah.
Let's talk, before we move on to football, I want to get your take, because you were there, Michele. They celebrated the 1993 team, the 25-year anniversary of the 93 team. That team also, their coach that year became part of a storyline over the weekend. But first, tell me, what was it like to have to see those guys get celebrated, and then share your thoughts on the whole Cal Pitino invite?
Well, in terms of the team itself, prior to the game, we were given an opportunity to speak with Jamel Martinez, Jared Prickett, and Dale Brown. Now, I don't know about anybody else, but I hadn't seen Jamel Martinez, I don't think, since he left UK.
Probably then, same, yeah.
Now, Jared Prickett, see him on a fairly regular basis, but he's local in Lexington, so he comes up and comes to various events. Dale Brown, maybe seen once or twice, but they all looked good, and they were waiting to come to the podium, and Jared was the first one out, and he's sitting there, of course, in the media room. They're famous for their cookies. They've got the best cookies in the media room at Rupp. And Jared's sitting against the wall, and he's like, I don't want to get up there until the other guys come out. So he's sitting there against the wall eating cookies. I got a picture of him with his mouth full of chocolate chip cookie. But anyhow, when they came up, they were really relaxed, and they've still got that bond. You know, it's kind of cool. And I wish we had gotten to see the rest of them that were there, but they kind of kept them either under wraps or, what is Terry doing?
I wanted to interrupt you, Michele, and say, are you seeing what I'm seeing?
I'm trying not to look, because
He's got a blanket. What else? I mean, is he? You got it going on there.
And the ceiling fan. But anyhow,
I'm tucking my little one in. That's what I'm trying to do, guys.
Being a dad, okay. We leave him alone then.
It was just funny to see it from this end. But anyhow, there were like questions about what it was like on the team and their camaraderie, and how they, what it was like, getting to the Final Four and that type of thing. I said, and they all handled that well. Now, I thought Jamel Martinez looked like he had aged the least. And I mentioned that to Larry Vaught, and I was like, is it just me? I said, or does Jamel, maybe he doesn't look younger than when he played. I said, but he looks like way younger than his teammates now. And I finally figured it out. It's because when Jamel was a player, he looked 20 years older than everybody else, if you think about it. And so anyhow, so I told that to Larry, and we're laughing about that. They opened up to questions, and by gosh, Larry Vaught steals my question and says something to Jamel about him aging especially well. And he's like, I've got all this gray in my beard, whatever. After it was over, I went up to Jamel and told him that was my point. I just want you to know that I'm the one who said you were young looking. But John Huang, if you're familiar with John?
John who?
John Huang.
No.
Anyway, he asked. He's good for asking the question. He made Rachel Lawson cry in a post-game press conference but in a good way.
Okay.
But he asked him, he said, I think it was the Vanderbilt game, and I believe, Jared, you were fouled, and how did Jamel end up taking the free throws? If you remember that, you remember the whole free throw controversy?
I do, yeah.
Yeah. And Jared just looked, and he said, I know nothing about it. I don't know what you're talking about. And they're all laughing, and they kind of had a little back and forth. I've got a video of it. It's pretty funny, but at one point they finally came up and said, I wish Travis Ford was here. He was the ringleader.
Oh, Travis wasn't there. He was not there.
No, he was not at reunion, but that's why
I see what you're saying.
I wish that he was there to answer the question because, and Jared's like, I was a freshman. I just did what they told me to do. And the whole thing was because Jared wasn't hitting free throws and Jamel was. And then he pointed out, he said, this is what I don't understand. And Jared said, I kind of get it, like between me and Jamel, okay, at least we're the same race. He said, what I can't figure out is how Travis got away with shooting free throws for Andre Riddick. And he does a little thing like his hand, like Andre Riddick, Travis, not the same color. And then he pointed out, that when Patino was asked about that after the game, he didn't know anything about it. Like, well, coach, is that what you told him? He was like, he had no clue. And in the end, Prickett, Martinez, and Ford all got suspended for a game, but Andre didn't for some reason. They don't know why. But it was kind of fun. Like I said, they were a lot of fun to talk to. And the other ones that were there that came out when they did the recognition at halftime, Jeff Brasso was there. Well, now I'm just going to sit here and draw a blank. I could have remembered all this earlier. Henry Thomas, there's a name you don't remember from
You're right.
way back when. Andre Riddick was there. Yep, that's all I'm remembering right now.
But the buzz, let's go to Patino, the whole Patino thing.
Well, now the players were asked about Patino and what he had gone through, and they all said, that was our coach, and we still love him. The things that happened, it was unfortunate and kind of saddening. But Prickett pointed out, when it was at Kentucky, that kind of thing just did not happen.
Right.
None of that would ever have happened because he said, Coach, you didn't hang around that type of people. He was involved with everybody. He knew what was going on with everybody all the time. And he said, whatever it was that did come out, I said they're still going to love him because that was their coach. And then Cal in the post-game presser had said that he had wished that Patino was there to share in the honor and reiterated the things that Patino did for Kentucky. And he said, I think Rick thinks he would not be welcomed by the fans. And I think the fans would welcome him back. I think he's wrong about that. I think they really would, to show him respect and appreciation for the things he did when Kentucky needed to be lifted up. And inside, the only thing I'm thinking, and I leaned over to Matt Smith was sitting next to me, and I said, obviously, Cal is right. He does not read Twitter.
Right.
If he believes that the fans would be welcoming to Rick Pitino, he doesn't read Twitter at all.
Oh, my God. That Terry potentially could have been a very embarrassing scene at Rupp. Because to Michelle's point, I don't think he's actually, I think he doesn't actually tweet. He has someone else tweet for him. And he probably is not even looking at any of the responses or anything. So for him to know what goes on in the Twitter world, I think it's safe to say he doesn't. But
no,
to think that the fans would really embrace Patino, I think there would be a good contingent that would, but you would have some fans there that would have just made it somewhat embarrassing, in my opinion.
Definitely. And I've said this before, the tale of Rick Pitino it's a sad story because it's one of those things where right now and for the foreseeable future, can he go back to? I mean, you look at Georgetown games and John Thompson II sits on the sidelines. St. John's, we're of a certain age. We remember Lou Carnesecca until he passed away. He was still on the sidelines.
Mm-hmm.
Tark the Shark, Derry Tarkanian, UNLV after all that was still welcome back. But for a man to win 2 titles, and I know the asterisks and all that, but to win 2 titles at 2, top 7, top 8 programs and not be welcomed back. I mean, that's a sad tale. what I do know is the guys that played for him, and Michele, you know, we work with Cameron Mills, they love him. He's still their coach.
Right.
They're not going to come out and give that segment of the Big Blue Nation, they're not going to come out and condemn Pitino because he's still their guy.
Mm-hmm.
So I've always said if Pitino had left and gone to the Celtics and then come back and coached, I think UNLV was an option or Michigan was an option.
Michigan, right. Yeah.
And had won there, he still would be able to come back.
Mm-hmm.
I think he miscalculated thinking he'd go to Louisville, still engender the love. And once he got that reaction from Kentucky fans, then it just became a back and forth. He was very condescending, very kind of, you know, you redneck fans over here. I'm in the big cosmopolitan city now. And so there's that friction that didn't have to be. Mm-hmm. You know, I still think he probably could have gone to U of L, had the success, and still have been able to be welcomed back in the fold. But obviously that didn't work out. So It's going to be a while. He may be 80 like Joe B or 90 before he's welcomed back. But, you know, he made that bed. Now he has to lie in it.
I think if Cal has his way, I think Rick will come back sooner than later because I think, you know, Cal is all about going to do things his way. And I think deep down, this might be, I think I'm going to, this is my opinion. Cal doesn't sweat what Big Blue Nation thinks about what he says or what he does. He's going to do things the way he wants to. And I think if he would have took a poll, Michele, before thinking of, you know, going to Rick, you know, in doing the invite, you know, I think the 50-50 at best, Michele.
I don't know about, but one point I wanted to raise, even, and I have written this, I wrote an article the last time Pitino was in Rupp Arena, his infamous exit. And I wrote basically, you know, it didn't have to be this way.
Is that the bird when he flipped?
Yeah. And a lot of the points that I agree with Terry, you know, if he hadn't lied to us before he went to Boston, that would have been another strike in his favor. But he said, I'm not going anywhere, and 2 days later was gone. The whole thing come back from Louisville. If he had just said, I get it, y'all not going to be happy because this is a rival, but this is a great opportunity and I want to be in the state. People would have been mad for a while. When the games came up, there would have been a good back and forth, but people could have gotten over that. I think they even could have gotten over some of the other stuff, but when he flipped the fans off his last time there, that was what really ratcheted up the hatred. And it didn't, you know, somebody, what's a competitive thing? No, that's not competitive. That's being a douchebag.
Right. Yeah.
And you didn't have to. I mean, like, are you that thin-skinned?
Well, clearly, that moment, remind me, that moment, it was a reaction to maybe what some fans were chatting, chirping at him.
Well, even so, I mean.
I'm not saying excusing it, but that's what I'm.
But if that's his excuse, I mean, like, grow a pair and grow up.
Well, and I agree with you, Kevin. I think that Cal wants to bring Rick back into the fold because I think that Calipari, more than any other coach, is sensitive to the legacy issue. Right now, I think he's building his legacy at Kentucky, but he looks back and he knows that at Memphis they don't want him back. And UMass, you know, the people that were warm and fuzzy for him at UMass aren't there. So I think he's a little bit more sensitive to being in exile and having people dismiss your work over some personal stuff. What Rick Pitino did on the sidelines as the head men's basketball coach at the University of Kentucky is nothing short of miraculous. If you talk to the Oscar Combs of the world and those people that know when he was hired, where the program was and where he got it on April 1st, 1996, I know Kentucky, the program, it's got inherent, it's got inherent advantages. But what he did in that window and then set the table for 97 to 98 you have to say, I don't like the man, but by God, he could coach.
He could coach. Absolutely. Yeah.
He gave us, that's when I became a Kentucky fan. 93, I wasn't a fan, but I remember, the comeback against LSU, the 86 point. I mean, I can rattle off all this stuff that he made Kentucky the it program. We've talked about Cal losing his luster a little bit right now, maybe, but Kentucky has always been good.
Right.
But Pitino was the first coach, and Cal has kind of ratcheted up to really make it really cool to be a Kentucky player, to be a Kentucky fan. I know that I forget what rap song it was, but somebody rapped, "I got more cats than Rick Pitino." That's making it cool. And he did that. And whatever happened after he left, I get it. I mean, I get it. All the to the ceiling, to the Katina Powell, all that. I get it. But you cannot tell the story of Kentucky basketball and omit Rick Pitino. You can't do it. It just it won't work.
Right. You can't. And you shouldn't. If you're a true Kentucky fan, then you got to appreciate the history. And to your point, Terry, for him to come in and do what he did after the Sutton debacle and taking us to elite status at the time he left, we were elite.
Yeah.
One thing to Terry's point is about why Cal embraces this. I don't think that he's really a persona non grata at UMass. Did they not just have him in the Hall of Fame, put in the Hall of Fame at UMass?
Well, yeah, no, yeah, you're right, and
it's not that type of thing, but I do agree because and I forget who it was that said something just this week that Cal, above every other coach that's been here, has embraced the past, has encouraged players that weren't his players, come back, get your degree, be a part of this. He's wanted that to keep that tradition, to keep former players in front of the fans' faces, and the way he loves how Joe B is treated. When he sees that, just the absolute love and adoration that the fans have for him. And I think that that's like a super cool thing. And one thing I can tell you, you would have never have seen that type of thing happen with Pitino here. And I might have been in the minority, but I was kind of having Pitino fatigue before he left. I appreciated the national championship. I appreciated his coaching, but I was just over the me. Everything was, I thought this, I did that. Whereas when Cal's doing something, we thought maybe that it's always a we mentality with Cal, and with Rick, It was always I, unless they lost, in which case it was them. He never missed an opportunity to throw his entire team under the bus, ever.
No, good points. Damn good points. All right, let's talk some football. Terry, in this past week or so, 2 weeks, Josh Allen has dominated all the defensive awards. Great for him. Great for the program.
Absolutely.
Great for Stoops and the players, all his teammates. I mean, this season, the season played out very well. I mean, you think about it. What, 9-3? No one thought that. We got a chance to 10-win season. But the awards after the fact, Bunchy Stallings, Benny Snell making All-American teams, and we've made some noise after since the season ended, keeping our program relevant and in discussion, Terry. So
exactly, and my whole thing is, let's not let the Tennessee loss, and it was a bad loss. Let's not let but let's not let the Tennessee loss overcome every single thing else we saw from the 2018 Wildcats. Everybody, and this is national media, This is our own fans. This is local people. Well, we lost to Tennessee. Yeah, we did. And if you're not Alabama, chances are you're going to have a bad loss. I mean, that's just the way it is over the last 5 or 6 years. But if you're going to say, same old Kentucky, really? We've had 3 All-Americans at Kentucky at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
We've had the consensus defensive player of the year. Have we? I mean, unless I'm missing something, I'm seeing us turn the page because it's not been, the recruiting has been better. But what I like is when Josh Allen came in, when Benny Snell came in, they weren't the diamonds of the recruiting classes that we thought. They weren't the names that we heard.
Mm-hmm.
So the recruiting is there, but what we're also seeing is development.
Development, man.
Now Coach Stoops and Coach Morrow, Coach Grand can sit down and say, look, Josh Allen, and they can unroll his list of accomplishments, and they can say, he was a 2-star. Nobody wanted him but us. We can help you get where you want to go. That's the same way Cal used to be able to do it. We talked about that. But it's a step in the right direction.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at the accolades that these guys are winning, and much deserved, but usually what we see in Kentucky is you have a great year and then you fade back because the stars kind of aligned for that one great year.
Mm-hmm.
Tim Couch in 98, Andre Woodson kind of, it all kind of lined out.
Right.
Well, now we're going to miss Benny. We're going to miss Josh Allen, but Terry Wilson looked pretty good this year.
Mm-hmm.
A.J. Rose looked pretty good. Cavassier Smoke looked pretty good. Lynn Bowden looked pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the defensive side, we're going to have Cash Daniels looked pretty good. So the depth has been there for the game-to-game situations, but now it's next man up.
Yeah.
No one person's going to replace Josh Allen, but we've got guys that can do the same job.
Yeah, and Michele, recruiting-wise, the Stoops was able to snag 2 players out of here in Louisville that were, are similar to Josh Allen, build and potential. So, I'm really digging the football program right now.
Well, I will be, and I've said this to you several times before, Kevin, one of the things that I follow the least in the world is football recruiting. And for a very good reason, because until they actually show up on campus,
True.
I mean, that's the most fluid situation. As a matter of fact, when I sent my message out this week that my podcast was ending, Matt Smith, I respect your decision. And then Curtis went on about what the rules are. You got to respect your decision. That's the rules in podcasting and recruiting. But
we're going to talk about that in a moment, but go ahead.
But anyhow, speaking to the team, and this is my whole big contribution toward the recruiting conversation here. There were probably 20 to 25. It's hard to tell the numbers because of family members, but I would say at least 20 recruits that were at the game yesterday. Now, well, big deal. Well, the reason it was a big deal was because one of the timeouts in the first half, they recognized, first they brought out, who came out first? Lynn Bowden might have come out first. Then they had Benny Snell, Bunchy Stallings, and you bring out Josh Allen. When Josh Allen set foot on that court, I promise you, I have not heard cheers that loud since the 2003 Florida game when we just absolutely kick-stomped them to the curb when Florida was ranked number 1.
Yeah.
And that's the loudest I'd heard it. And, of course, Cash Daniel and C.J. Conrad and George Asafo Ajay, a couple others, they come out. Stoops comes out with the Governor's Cup. The place went absolutely nuts.
I heard, man.
And Josh Allen was the Y in the second half. And that was, I mean, like I said, it was the place. Media Row was shaking a little bit, Terry. That's how much, that's what the cheers were like. And of course, when the game's about over, like maybe, 3-4 minutes to go, the whole big clump of recruits and their family. That's why I said it was hard to tell how many, but you saw this big contingent. But to see how the football team was embraced at a basketball school,
Right.
that has to pay huge dividend. And Terry and I both know we're not just a basketball school. People shut up.
Well,
but I think that's going to be a big deal.
And that's been used to negatively recruit. That's going back years and years and years. Football recruits, the football coaches of opposing teams, hey, point that out. So that's a step in the right direction. And to your point, Kevin, being here in Louisville, growing up, I know there were certain areas of town where there weren't Kentucky anything. Right. I'm thinking West End. I'm thinking you feel what I'm saying.
Right.
But now it's different. My girls go to school downtown in the West End, and I see Kentucky shirts, Kentucky house flags, Kentucky whatever, and that didn't used to be the case. No. So whatever Satterfield's going to do at Louisville, he needs to try to stem the momentum of Coach Stoops recruiting out of Louisville, because as we know, the state of Kentucky doesn't produce a lot of D1 talent.
No.
But if you let Stoops and company kind of muscle in on those guys that are D1 talent, Louisville's really got to make headway if they want to catch up.
No offense, but that's not our problem. So my take is the momentum from this year is going to pay dividends for us.
Absolutely.
It's huge. It's totally huge, and every chance that I don't know if there's any more awards left to play out, but maybe not. But we still got one game where Terry, all the stars players said they're committed to play, which is great for us. I did have some concerns that maybe Josh might, because these top 5 pick, man, and if he would have said, I have to skip this game, I would have had no problem with it. But says a lot about him too. So.
Right, and I think that these guys, these seniors that have been around, that came during the 5 and 7, the 2 and 10 years, I think they really feel a thank you to Stoops and everything, because coming to Kentucky, even those guys that weren't heavily recruited, it didn't make a lot of sense then.
Right.
It's Kentucky football. It's 2 and 10. It's 5 and 7, 5 and 7. So I like it. I think it's going to be one of the better bowl games. We had a Penn State guy on our Cats Talk Wednesday show that said, this is Penn State, but they're taking this game serious. Mm-hmm. Like this isn't, it's Kentucky. Like the pundits can say that, but the people in the know at Penn State, he's like, yeah, the coach is like, how are we going to block Josh Allen? Like, how are we going to stop, a healthy Benny Snell? Right. We may not be hearing that around the country, but believe me, in Happy Valley, they know what this Kentucky football team is all about.
Yeah.
Michele, and they know about Terry Wilson too, because they commented that they said we understand he may have been banged up a little bit in the season, and we expect him to be healthy, and that's a big concern for them.
Yeah. So, I don't know what the stat line is when it comes to how many All-American. I know we put 3 players on the All-American teams. Yeah. I don't know what
the first time in 68 years.
Exactly. By the way. But what I'm saying is, Penn State-wise, I don't know how many they put up there. So my point is that we've got some players that Penn State, the team, their fans are aware of, because we've got some made some national noise. So good for us. Seriously, it's like it was December. You said the date, Michele, 16th, 15th, 16th.
Today's the 16th.
And we're still heavily talking football.
How can you not, with Josh Allen, having to call for all his awards? How can you? It would be malpractice.
He's got to build a house for his awards.
A new wing, his wing.
and if you'd have told me that the main guy in football we'd be talking about wasn't going to be Benny Snell, who himself was an All-American,
right?
I'm just stupefied and dumbfounded and happy that it's happening. Because
actually, I thought Mike Edwards would have gotten it before Josh Allen, and I've said this on several shows. I think it's kind of sad in a way because Mike Edwards had an outstanding season.
He did,
and nobody's talking about it because Josh Allen obliterated everything. And Mike Edwards is not upset about that. That's the other cool thing. These guys really came together. And I said, didn't I tell you before the season? I said, it's like everybody's got a secret. We know something you don't know. And you laughed at me. I remember you laughed at me.
Did I?
And you told me I was drinking the Kool-Aid already. And I'm like, I'm telling you, there is something different this year. I could tell it from media day.
And so once we come to terms with the Tennessee game, I think we will look back on this year fondly. I think it's going to be a stepping stone to being that 8-9 win team year in and year out.
I wish people would have already dropped it. I mean, every single year, if you are not Alabama or Clemson, every single team, every college football team has a game where you're going, what happened there?
And even Alabama has lost to Texas A&M with Johnny Manziel. They've lost to Ole Miss in Tuscaloosa. College football, it happens. I think personally that the Georgia game bled into the Tennessee game. But if you take away the Tennessee game, you've got 11 games where the Cats played well. Georgia, the talent gap was just wide. Texas A&M, one more first down. There's just one thing. But every other game, a year after looking really bad, the year before, this is a step in the right direction.
Totally agree. I absolutely agree. Now, looking ahead to the Penn State game, guys, most national pundits, a lot, are picking Penn State to beat us.
Bless their hearts.
Yeah. I actually, for those, I don't know how many games this season, we were underdogs for a long time.
I'm glad. I would rather go in as the dog. You bring us in as an underdog, and other than the Louisville game when we were heavily favored and we came through and heavily won, they played much better when people didn't expect them to win.
And Terry, to be honest, the fact that we were so heavily favored against Louisville, I was actually, it made me
apprehensive.
It's a rivalry game, so I thought Louisville would played a little closer. But the fact that we went in there and really kicked their ass, I mean, that says where our focus is right now, where our talent is right now. Granted, Louisville is just bad this year, but if you play a bad team, you should beat them. If you're a decent team, you should beat them like they're a bad team, and that's what we did. Right.
And it could have been worse. The 2 interceptions in the third quarter, in the red zone could have been worse. But think about it. I don't know I forget what we were favored in the Louisville game. But the last time,
17 or so. Yeah.
But think about that. We were 28-point underdogs 2 years ago. 28-point underdogs to 17-point favorites. I've done some looking in different kind of rivalry series. That's a 40-point swing that you just don't see unless somebody gets on probation or something. That speaks to what Stoops did right and what Petrino did wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I think we've talked enough Kentucky hoops, Kentucky football. Michele, I want to turn to you. You, Big Blue Views, you made the announcement that tomorrow, Monday night, will be the last show. Care to maybe elaborate more than what you did on Twitter? Anything you want to share and add, and how you feel about that? Because this has been your baby for several years, and I feel you. I know what it, doing a show for that long is.
It has been my baby, and it's like kind of feel like I'm quad A green. Why didn't you finish out the year? Well, because Monday a week from now is Christmas Eve, and of course the week after that is New Year's Eve. So odds of having a show on those nights were low to none.
Right.
There's a little fatigue, and it didn't feel fresh anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I had always said that whenever it stops being fun, where I just can't wait till showtime,
Mm-hmm.
it might be time to step away. And it had, personally, a lot of things that happened this year took a toll on me emotionally. So that kind of deflates your enthusiasm for a lot of things. But I'm excited because number one, I can have free Mondays for a little while, or free Mondays for as long as I want free Mondays, I suppose. But I have discovered, surprisingly, I mean, there obviously the people that publicly commented, those were not surprises. Of very, very kind words, although I didn't expect Roger Harden to jump in and actually very, very, very nice words. He ended up following me on Twitter now, but okay. But it was the private messages I got after the fact. And I would say sometime after the new year, I couldn't tell you when, might be a month, might be 4 months, might be 6 months. But I've had several opportunities tossed out of potential new pursuits, which would be fresh, which would be new. And I'll be still writing for Camera Mill. So, it's not like I'm going to disappear from the scene, but I think it just, I wanted to kind of hit 200 shows, but I was like, I don't want to hit 200 shows if the last 6 are crap.
I feel you.
So it'll be, well, tomorrow will be show 195. And I'm pretty proud of it because I never thought we would last longer than 30 days. And my original co-host, Mike McQuinn, he made it 7 months, I think, before he decided it was just too much.
And those were always weekly shows, right, Michelle?
2 hours every Monday.
Every Monday. So from the get-go until now. Wow.
Yeah.
And, I'll throw my 2 cents in. Doing these podcasts, these shows, it's not just showing up and doing it. I mean,
no, it's not. There's a lot of work.
There's a lot of preparing.
Having somebody to partner along with that in terms of show prep and promotional things. I mean, it's one thing to sit there and go through all the technical stuff of setting your show up. And by the time you've done that and come up with topics and gotten your guests and everything lined up, then the last thing you want to do is have to start composing a bunch of Facebook posts and tweets to promote it. But if you don't have somebody helping you do it, that's what you got, and it will wear you down after a while. So I think like Terry and Vinny have got a pretty good thing going that, I think Vinny does most of the technical stuff for you. As Terry and I discovered the one week that Vinny was gone, and I was going to help Terry, and 20 minutes, it was fun.
I set it for 20 minutes instead of 120, so we had a very quick show that night. So yeah.
Well, for the live part, right? You only did the 20.
Oh well, no, it cut him off after another.
Oh, it actually cut it.
It was. I said no problem. You'll still record because I've done that before.
Yeah.
And 10 minutes later, all of a sudden, thank you for using Blog Talk Radio. Goodbye. So, but like I said, I'm looking at this. I said a door closes, and apparently, when this door closed, there's 7 or 8 that appear to be opening. So, whatever is ahead, I will embrace with all the enthusiasm, and I hope wherever I end up that people will be just as supportive and as welcoming as they were when I did this little ragtag show.
Well, your show, I'll speak on my behalf, and I know Terry would want to jump in, but your show, Big Blue Views, was part of Shooting from the Lip. I mean, it was you coming on. You were always one of my go-to. When to do sports. I've listened to your show, Big Blue Views. I've been on it. You do a great job. You've done a great job. I'm gonna miss it. But I feel you, man. It's the whole blog talk radio thing, and once whatever platform you go on after the fact, it's going to be better. Blog talk is just horrible.
Well, the thing about Blog Talk that they offered that nobody else did was for the listeners to call in live.
Right. Well,
And
see, that was it. Are you moving forward? Are you still wanting to do a live show? Because that's where I found out that I don't want to do a live show. I'd rather record it and edit and and all that good stuff.
well, I'm not a good editor because I don't have any of the. Somebody was going to send me links to some software for editing once upon a time. That's about 2.5 years ago. I'm still waiting for those links. Yeah, there you go. Turn your head. You knew it was you. But it'll depend on what venture I get into and what. I think it'll come out. It'll happen organically. Whatever I end up doing, I'll know based on that. Like I said, there's a couple of really interesting propositions that have been made. And I'm not at liberty to go to any other details because one of them's like really, really cool.
Very good.
But we'll find out. I just say never say never, and I appreciate the support that Shooting from the Lip has given us, and Cats Talk Wednesday. And Vinny and Terry were actually my inspiration to start the podcast, believe it or not.
Really?
I never told them that until this week.
So what happened was when we started Cats Talk, I think we were just Wildcat Wednesday at that point.
Yeah.
How long ago was that, Terry?
4 years, 4.5.
4 or 5 years ago. Yeah, we've been plugging along for a while.
Y'all been going about 6 months before I started, and I started February 2015. So I think y'all were summer of 2014.
That would make basically we had 3 listeners, and Michele was one, and we had Michele would call in and give her.
I had a reserved parking place.
Absolutely. So when we were first starting out, Michele was one of those voices that was calling in. That was retweeting us, that was helping us with the stuff she was talking about that gets burdensome when you got to get your own hustle on.
Mm-hmm.
The thing I always liked about Big Blue Views and Michele in general, and I don't know if I've told her this, is she just got a unique voice. And you guys know from podcasting and just from watching TV in general, you don't want to watch imitations of somebody else. I've had people ask me, what's your advice about podcasting? Like, you've got to find what works for you. You've got to find your voice. You've got to come from a genuine place. Like, we can say what we want to about Skip Bayless and Stephen A. Smith, but they're doing their thing. They're not imitating anybody. They're just doing their thing, and it works for them. Right. So you just have to find what works for you. And Michele, what she has been able to do with Kristen, with Kelly, and all that through Big View News, she had a unique voice in the crowded marketplace that's podcasts related to Kentucky sports. There's a lot out there.
There is.
And so they did a great job. And I know Michele's kind of the engine that drove that. And I tip my hat. I'm going to call in tomorrow, and hopefully not cry. And then we'll definitely give a shout out on Cats Talk Wednesday because, you were there for us from the very beginning. And I've been very fortunate to have Vinny do a lot of the heavy lifting on my end. But you guys know it's a grind to do this kind of thing week in, week out. 2 hours is a lot of time.
It is.
Like you like most people think, oh, you just do a 2 hour show. Like, it's a lot. Like,
like they're thinking 2 hours a week, but no, it's 2 hours in one night.
Mm-hmm.
And invariably, and I know Terry can relate to this, especially when so many of the SEC games were on Wednesday nights.
Yeah.
Y'all don't have that. By the time y'all have your next show, you're 2 games behind, and you're trying to play catch up, and then you feel like, well, I'm not being current. And that's the real trick with a weekly show is all this stuff that's happened, and people have already discussed it to death. How do you keep that fresh? Mm-hmm. How do you make that something people want to listen to again?
Right.
And that's what I really like to say to you and Vinny. And my gosh, Vinny's a freaking walking encyclopedia of every sport under the freaking sun.
And Vinny, to his credit, and I'm gonna tell him to listen to this. His whole thing about asking people to be on is the worst they can say is no.
Right.
I mean, we had Sinbad on Wednesday night for about half an hour.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah, it was crazy. He just sends me a message while we're on the air, and he's like, Sinbad's going to call in at 7:30. I'm like, Sinbad? Right. I'm like, Sinbad? And it was Sinbad that came on and talked about Coach Cal and Kentucky. I mean, I was surprised, but, just doing a show like this, it can become, I don't want to say burdensome, but you can get burned out on anything.
Mm-hmm. No,
I tell you now, Kevin, one of the funniest things that happened on my show, and it was a night we were discussing who was the most annoying national analyst media type person. And that was back the year that Indiana had a sort of good, semi-decent team. And Dan Dockich, of course, was just trashing Kentucky at every turn. And so I'm assuming, that Dockich is going to win this poll of most annoying. And we're kind of talking about that back as Krista was co-hosting them. Well, somebody decided Jeff Goodman, and they tagged him in their reply. Jeff Goodman happened to be at that point in an airport waiting for a flight.
I remember this.
And he, of course, is checking his mentions. And he replies, I'd like to weigh in on this topic. What's your phone number? I put it out there like that's going to happen. And 3 minutes later, I look and there is a number I don't recognize. So I answer and this is Jeff Goodman. And I recognize the voice. It's Jeff freaking Goodman. And I was fully expected to hate him.
Great story, but you couldn't.
But he's like, I troll. I do a lot of things for hits. That's like my thing. I've got to. And we had a discussion about the Harrison twins and about Tyler Eulis. And he actually had a lot of really good things to say. And he explained, and I was like, at 140 characters, you can't get everything that you want to say. Plus, a certain radio show deemed him a villain. Yeah. Therefore, everybody in Big Blue Nation just must go along.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But I did actually met Jeff Goodman in person at the Duke game back in November. Mm. He came walking into the media room, and I'm like, what the heck? I'll just, nobody else from Kentucky media is going to talk to him because they're all supposed to hate him. And I went up, and he actually remembered having been on my show, and we talked for several minutes. He's really not the villain people think. But that's the kind of things about the podcast that sometimes when you're, and Terry will know this, like the Sinbad thing, that's going to re-energize you for 3 or 4 months.
Exactly.
Just that one thing because you didn't expect it.
Mm-hmm. And that, for you guys, that's kind of the whole beauty of a podcast.
Of a live.
Being live. And, and I stopped doing the live thing a while back.
The downside to it is the caller we got 2 or 3 weeks ago that started out like a really normal call, and he claimed to have been from Bell County and big. He was a fan of the non-revenue sports, and he was especially women's basketball, and he loved Kentucky women's basketball. He goes, "You might have heard of one of the players I know." He said, "You might have heard of Macy Morris," and I'm like, "Well, duh." And he talks about knowing Macy when she was in high school, and then he says his friend dated her, and then I'm thinking something doesn't sound right, Why is he talking about his friend having dated Macy? And I have the button over on disconnect, and then he started into a whole string of things that I cannot repeat, or I will not repeat. I choose not to repeat them, but they were vile and nasty. And Blog Talk, you can look at the disconnect button and it'll still knock somebody off. I'm clicking it and it will not disconnect him. And I'm like, of all times, finally got him disconnected, and I'm like, dude's got a permanent residence in his mother's basement. That was the one downside, but by and large, like I said, I got. And it's like Terry said, the worst thing a guest can do if you ask them to be on that, they can say no.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And
exactly.
There were so few people that ever said no. We even had Laura Bell Bundy on our show once. Figure that one out.
For real?
Yeah. She had just come out with a new album, and I'm like, saw her Facebook page, like to be on a podcast, and all of a sudden her agent contacted me and she was on the podcast.
Very cool. Very cool. You know, that's another with, you know, you guys, Big Blue Views, Cats Talk Wednesday, and some of the other.
Oh, the KY Sports guys, Girls Beer Sports.
Yeah, all of them. You know, those several of you guys, you know, were doing the live thing, you know, doing a live show every week. And that was part of another reason why I was like, I don't need to, especially when sports, I don't need to do a live sports show because my friends have got it covered. So when I do, like tonight, I can do these one-offs every Sunday or whatever Sunday night I want to do it. And I get to just pick up, you know, I don't need to reflect, you know, go in the past, too far in the past, because you guys have already covered it. So
I just want to do that to honor Terry Brown.
There he is. Guests lined up. What's your show going to be, Michele?
Well, a lot of it will be reminiscing, and I'm hoping that a lot of people will call in. That's what I'm asking, is that they would call in if they've ever been on the show or listened or whatever. I'm hoping to have as my final guest the person who was my very first guest, and the only reason he was my very first guest, he was the only person who had the nerve to ask. You know, I wasn't brave at first. But I had just started writing for Cameron Mills. So I thought, I'll ask him to be on my podcast. And of course he did. And I think we had 400 people that listened live that night. It was before one of the tournament games. I was stunned that 400 people would listen to us. And we had like 2,000 downloads. And I'm like, okay, who's got the media room washing machine? Oh, sorry, that's a joke. I hear the squeak going on.
I hear it. I don't know.
Yeah, it sounds like in the media room at Rupp that there's a sound up in the ceiling, and it does that. And the Utah coach last night finally was, and the dude looked like he had a hangover. I would like to point that out. But he's looking up and he's going, "Is there a washing machine on the website?" He was funny. I liked him. The squeak has really just got me off my game here, Kevin. I can't.
I'm not the squeaker right now, but anyway.
It's Terry's ceiling fan. That's what it is.
Terry, is it your ceiling fan? You got a ceiling fan on?
I do, but I don't know if it's squeaking.
Do you hear the squeak?
Maybe I'm the squeaky and I can't hear the squeak.
I don't know.
I'll investigate.
Yeah, don't need.
I don't know. It just no, don't go away.
Well, I do plan on calling in.
I'm hoping Cameron will be on tomorrow.
Well,
that's
good.
the whole thing. I've asked him. He hasn't confirmed, but he thinks he can.
195 shows. Well, that's still a lot. That is a lot.
I created every last one of them.
I feel you. But you know what? I think I told you this.
Control freak.
I'm a control freak because, you know, though I've had co-hosts, quote unquote, co-hosts on other times and during a stretch or whatever, I was still doing everything. And some of that was by choice. Some of that was because maybe the people didn't do it. But at the end of the day, I was like, you know, this is my baby and I'm just going to kind of do it the way I want to. And, you know, if it hits or misses, then it's on me. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I get that to an extent.
Terry, any other celebrity from Hollywood coming on?
After last week, isn't it kind of like this week we're just going to have?
We're just going to have the guy from these people from the state of Kentucky on.
I mean, and that was the thing. Last week we just had Anthony Epps on and George Massey on, and then all of a sudden, you know, we've got to shoo them off because Sinbad's calling in. So I don't know. Vinny usually sends me out, you know, Tuesday morning who he's got lined up, and so I don't know who we're going to have. So it could just be the two of us, you know, ranting and raving, me on my soapboxes and that kind of thing.
Very cool. Very cool. Again, Michele, congrats on your run. My gut says you'll have a little bit of a downtime, but I think including present company here. If there's any projects that potentially can happen in 2019, I'd put my hat, my name in it, and
Well, as I replied after they said they respected my decision, those were the rules. I'm like, after I make the announcement where I will announce the date of my next announcement, even though this breaks all the rules, I will be open to interviews.
There you go. Well, I do my periodic Sunday night thing, so you'll always have a spot here. So.
And we didn't give away your parking spot for Cats Talk Wednesday, so if you get the urge, feel free to come back and join us, because you literally never know who else will show up and talk. So
exactly. Well, like I said, that's something I always enjoyed, and that was kind of like, well, heck, I could call them and bug them every week, or I could just let them have more people, because you were starting to pick up an audience too by that time. By the time I started mine, you all had gotten a good following, and you all were having regular guests, and I'm like, they'll get tired of hearing from me. I can do my own little thing and still call them occasionally. And it's just, like I said, I have absolutely no regrets whatsoever. And I'm excited about whatever happens in the future. And I appreciate you guys more than you ever know. Really do. I mean that from my heart.
We appreciate that. Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, guys. Shooting from the Lip, episode 365 tonight. I think, yes, Curtis Burch, B-U-R-C-H, Michele Brown, Terry Brown.
No relation. I mean, I know we look alike.
Yeah, two of my favorite Browns. They are.
What can Brown do for you?
Yeah, what can Brown do? Guys, thanks for hanging out with me tonight. And
thank you.
Tentatively, the next Sunday night show is going to be in 2 weeks, December 30th. So it'll be right after the Louisville game and
right before the Citrus Bowl.
Right before the Citrus Bowl.
Only because I'm actually going to be on another show to talk football. I don't know why I agreed to that.
And here we are. All right, guys. Thanks so much. Have a good night.
Thank you.